This is Charlie. Sometimes Charlie is going about his business when something scary happens. He starts to feel breathless and just can't get enough air. Lots of people like Charlie experience breathlessness for all sorts of reasons. Charlie uses an inhaler to help improve his breathing. Charlie's doctor says the inhalers should be enough and he shouldn't feel breathless quite as much as he does. But when Charlie reaches some stairs, he feels out of breath even before he starts climbing them. So why does Charlie feel breathless? If it isn't just about his body and lungs, does it have something to do with his brain? Scientists are interested in trying to understand what goes on inside our brains to make us feel breathless. The brain doesn't just listen to what the lungs tell it. It also uses our past experiences and our emotions. But sometimes the balance between new information and relying on old information gets upset. Scientists came up with an idea called the Bayesian brain. The Bayesian brain uses something called a mathematical model to describe how the brain works. Researchers think it can help us understand how the brain and lungs work together, and how each person's brain is influenced by their past experiences, their mood, and all sorts of other factors. Since everyone has lived a different life, everyone's brain is different. The scientists can scan Charlie's brain to see which brain pathways are active when he gets breathless. They hope that once they understand what's going on in his brain, they can pinpoint the best way to help treat his breathlessness. That way, they will know which treatments will be most effective and have ideas for new treatments that are yet to be designed. By doing specific exercises, Charlie was able to retrain his brain, which meant that finally, breathlessness isn't such a big issue for him anymore. All thanks to the Bayesian brain.
And the more you worry, the more you think, I can't breathe, the worse you make it. It's like your airways are closing up.
We are very interested in how the brain is involved in your perception of breathing and breathlessness.
So for example, some people with really bad lungs manage to get along fine, whereas other people whose lungs might not be so bad actually suffer terribly. And it's this mismatch between what we can measure as doctors in the lungs and in the heart and how people experience their illness.
Everyone perhaps underestimates the power of the mind. People are very hard on themselves and they think, oh, it's all in my head. It's not real. But when you start to appreciate how much control your brain has on the way that your body works, your whole neural pathways act as if something was happening to you.
And that's a big change in thinking from the old biomedical model that we were taught about in medical school, where disease leads to symptoms and we focus a lot on disease. I'm a climber. I've always noticed that the first day is really difficult, yet after a couple of days climbing, it all becomes a lot easier. I'm sure I haven't got that much fitter in 2 days. So that was one of the ways starting to think about breathlessness.
Okay, hi Kyle. So can you tell us a little bit about what we were doing last year at the Royal Society?
Okay, so our stand was called Breathing and the Brain. We were presenting our research that was showing how the brain is involved in perceptions of breathlessness that may be experienced by people with chronic airways disease, asthma, or more recently becoming a big problem in people who have suffered from COVID.
And I think when people think of COVID, they might not actually think of the brain. So why is it that we are looking at the brain now?
Right, okay. So initially, as you rightly say, COVID was thought to be primarily a lung infection, a respiratory tract infection. There's more and more evidence coming out that actually COVID infection seems to affect multiple systems across the body. For example, the kidney, the liver, the heart, and as we're looking at into its brain effects. So it's thought to be a multi-system, multi-organ disease.
And how many people actually experience these effects that have to do with the brain?
Okay, so 80% of people who have suffered COVID, and these are people who've been in the hospital, are suffering breathlessness 3 months after the illness, and approximately a similar number are suffering with fatigue. So certainly at the 3-month mark, it's showing to be an important effect of COVID. What we don't know, of course, is how many of these people these symptoms will continue.
And do we think we might have any clinical benefits from this study?
Of course, that's the primary aim of this work. What we hope to do is to be able to develop ways to firstly better understand COVID infection so that we could stratify people. We can work out from the brain imaging which patients may need specific treatments later on.
And there's something very exciting about the magnet that we're using today to test out the COVID programme. Can you tell us a bit about it?
So we're using our 7 Tesla functional MRI scanner. This is a super high powered scanner that enables us to detail activity in really small brain areas, and this is much more powerful than the standard scan you'd have in a hospital, and this has been a real boost to our breathlessness research over the years, so hopefully that will help us get the answers that we want.
Okay, so shall we go and take the viewers and let them see the scanner?
Yep, let's do it.
So this is our 7 Tesla magnet, and very shortly we're going to be putting Kyle into the centre of the magnet, which is called the bore. Okay, Kyle, so you're about to go into the scanner. Can you tell us a bit about what it took to get you ready?
So I've changed into these scrubs now, which have not got any pockets, and the whole point of this is to make sure I haven't taken anything into the scanner with me. The scanner is a super powerful magnet, and anything metal could either act as projectiles going in and sticking to the scanner, or it could muck up the scans itself. So we're very careful about magnetic safety and magnetic implements. So I've changed into the scanner. John here has done a safety check to make sure I've not got any implants that's in my body that could be disrupted by the scanner. I'm ready to go.
You can see Kyle's now moving backwards into the scanner, and we do this very slowly to make sure that he doesn't become dizzy as he moves through the magnetic field. Once he's safely in the scanner, and he does go back a long way, the radiographer checks that he's comfortable, and then if he is, he'll leave the scan room and shut the door. From that point, he'll speak to Kyle only from the outside of the scan room, although there is a buzzer inside the scanner that Kyle can push if he wants to come out. Then we start the sequences, and we're going to collect some structural information about his brain, some information about the chemistry, and maybe some activity information. Once the scans are finished, we can analyse the data and see if the sequences are good enough to test on patients. Now, this is why these pilot sessions are so important, and why experienced volunteers like Kyle are so useful, because we can check that we're getting the information we need from the scan sequences before we even have to put a patient into the scanner. So there you have it. We're using brain scanning technology to better understand how COVID is affecting the brain and why it makes you feel breathless.